Welcome to Cycle Breakers and Moneymakers, a podcast for women of color and first gen who are breaking generational cycles and glass ceilings by going places no one before them has ever gone. I'm your host, leadership coach, and eldest daughter of immigrants, Mariela de la Mora. I left a 16-year marketing career to create a multiple six-figure-a-year coaching business as a single mom. Each week, you'll learn how to build unshakable self-trust, become in demand, lead with confidence, and make more money by being more of who you are. Hey everyone. So welcome to this week's episode of Cycle Breakers and Moneymakers. I am very excited to bring this week's guest to you guys because there's so much about her story that mirrors my own story of how I literally rebuilt my life. And many times we can feel like you're too far gone. You are the way that you are. There's so many, in a way, like so many things that are pushing you towards a certain path. And it is possible to reinvent and rebuild and to kind of change the way that you've always thought about yourself. You can rewrite your story, but what does that really mean? So we're going to be talking about that this week with my guest, Natalia, who is also my private client. We've been working together since one-on-one since March. And when I met her, when we started working together and she shared her story, like I said, it mirrored so much of like a life where you think I created a life that I didn't really want, or I created a life where I don't even know who I am anymore. So when we meet or when we talk in this week's episode, she's actually going to share like what was that like, and then what were the steps that she started to take in order to untangle herself from religion, expectations around marriage, cultural expectations, family expectations. So there's so much here that you literally could use to like rebuild parts of your life. And again, like I said, I see so much of my own story in her. So I'm going to open with her, a little bit of her bio, and then I'm going to have her introduce herself. So Natalia Lopez-Thismon is a life coach, mentor, women's circle and rites of passage facilitator who is dedicated to helping Latinas who feel stuck in lives they don't want to regain the radical self-trust to rewrite their stories. So her journey with self-care began during her divorce in 2015 when she discovered the power of caring for herself, a practice she had rarely seen modeled by the women around her due to cultural norms that discourage women from prioritizing their own needs. As the eldest daughter in a Puerto Rican and Venezuelan family, Natalia is committed to breaking this cycle and creating new narratives for herself and others. With a background in communication and a passion for storytelling, Natalia helps her clients shift their perspectives and reconnect with their inner guide. She views self-care as a radical act of healing and the first step towards collective care. Outside of coaching, Natalia is a salsa and bachata dancer, yoga practitioner, a cat mom, and a tia to 4 nieces who inspire her to build a world where they and all women feel worthy to be exactly who they are. So with that being said, I'm so happy you're here, Natalia. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh. When you said like radical, like that self-care is radical. And I want to ask you more about that, especially with regards to what we've been modeled from like the women in our lineage, because I sometimes think like we don't fully realize that a lot of the ideas that we have aren't based on what people tell us, but it's like what we see. So I wanted to open up with like, first, I wanted to reframe how you help your clients so that people understand like this is why you do what you do. So you help Latinas who feel stuck in lives they don't want to regain the radical self-trust to rewrite their stories. So they feel stuck in a life they don't want and they want to rewrite their stories. And this is what it is. And I think so many of us have found that they have the life they actually tried to have on paper, that they actually got it, whether it's the job or the marriage or the house or the kids or whatever that is. And they're just like, this isn't me, or this isn't what I want anymore. And so tell us your story in terms of what shaped you to create the life that you once had. And then what was the moment that you took that first departure from that path?
So I grew up in you said it a little bit earlier, Puerto Rican Venezuelan family. My mom is from Venezuela. My father is from Puerto Rico. I grew up in Puerto Rico. We grew up in interesting conditions, moments. It was poverty. There was moments of extreme scarcity for our family. And then on top of that, we were also growing up in a pretty strict conservative religious environment. Not, I wouldn't say like at home exactly, but like our church was a big part of our lives. And so
Mm.
as I grew up into my teenage years, there was a lot of expectations on top of the cultural expectations, like Marianismo, where you are basically just sacrificing yourself for the well-being of other people and for your family, for your community, right? That was like the cultural expectation for us as Latinas, but also there was that added layer of what was expected from us in that religious environment as well.
Mm. Will you tell
So
us a little bit about Marianismo? Because I only really heard about that term like this year. And even I'm still like, is Marianismo where like the men are kind of in charge, or is it more about self sacrifice? Like, how do you describe it?
yeah, so Marianismo is this concept that reinforces the belief that Latinas should embody selflessness and humility
Mm.
and devotion, especially in the roles of motherhood and of caregiving, which are
Yeah.
not a bad thing, right? Like us having devotion to our children or nieces or our families, like those are not bad things, but we are doing it to the detriment of our bodies, of our health.
Hmm.
We experience a lot of guilt when we prioritize our own needs, or making self-care a priority feels selfish, or it feels
Yep.
even shameful. And I'm going to tell you a
That
little bit
makes sense.
about that later on, but
Yes.
that for me that was a
Okay.
big thing. Like I felt so selfish when I first started to.
That makes so much sense because I never heard the term, but when you say that, that's exactly what I was modeled. It was like being a good daughter, then it was like being a good girlfriend, being a good wife, being a good like just family member is like you are so helpful. You are so anticipatory of everyone's needs. Your house is clean, you're kind, you like are tired, like things like that is like these are all signs of goodness.
Yeah, all of these are signs of goodness, and working yourself to the bone is a sign of
Yes.
goodness, right? And so we see our mothers doing this, right? And our grandmothers, we observe them doing it and we take it upon ourselves, but not just we take it upon ourselves, like it's expected of us to behave in this way.
Yep.
So for me, that was a big thing, especially as an eldest daughter.
That makes sense. So Marianismo, so you said you had like Marianismo as like a big influence and then religion on top of that. So yeah, I can't tell.
Yeah. Yeah, and more, of course, right? So, but I think that as I got older, all of these expectations about who I was supposed to be became really big and really important for me. Like, I would stay up really late. I was like one of those like straight A kids because I was the eldest daughter and I wanted to please everybody and I wanted to make sure that everybody around me was good, and that my parents were like taken care of. And so I just felt a lot of burden as the eldest daughter to take care of everybody around me. And one of the ways that I was going to do that was by getting really good grades so that I could go to school and I could, be a successful whatever, and,
Yeah,
all of these different things. So, and then on top of that, there was an expectation too that I would marry and have children and do all of these things because that was part of what it meant to be a good Christian woman in the environment that
mm,
I was raised in. And
yeah.
so as
It's
I
almost
got
like your
older,
whole life is mapped out for you already. It's like that,
I
like you're not even opting, like you're not even deciding. It's just like, no, this is what it means.
no, yeah, I didn't get to decide a lot of it. It was like
Yep.
a lot of times, like when you do this, when you get married, when you have this,
Wow.
when you go to school, like it was very when.
That's so true.
And it's a
Yeah.
way good, you know what I'm saying? Like my parents used that, I think, as a good thing in terms of like making it so that I saw a future for myself. And at the same time, it also hurt in that it felt like it was a very prescribed path for my life.
That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, I never
So
thought about the when being, like, just you that's the beginning of you not thinking about what you
yeah,
want. Mhm.
absolutely. Yeah. And then I also want to add to all of this in terms of the religious aspect of all of it is the doctrine that I was being taught at church about my heart being deceitful and me
Ooh,
not being able to trust myself, right? So
yeah,
I was always looking for validation outside of myself by the adults, by the authority, by everybody else around me who knew better about the direction of my life than I did. And so
yeah.
that was also very heavy for me throughout my growing up years and into my young adulthood.
Yeah, when you said that, that was a thing you grew up with around being told your heart is deceitful. The way that I grew up in being Catholic was like that temptation, like
Yes,
was bad, but like service and righteousness and all these things are like good.
because Marianismo is
Mhm.
bad. You're being told these are the things that are righteous, and then these are the things that are like evil and bad. So
Yes.
things evil and bad include things about you putting yourself first, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
about you trusting yourself and you trusting your heart, because that cannot be trusted. And imagine what that does to women, because we are so intuitive. We are so
Yeah.
intuitive. Our wisdom is
Yeah.
so inside of us. And so
Yeah.
yeah, very damaging, in my opinion, to teach women this, to teach
And
anybody
it's
this, but
also very
especially
much tinged with, like, anything that's pleasurable or enjoyable as well.
so layered. It is so layered.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is what I grew up in, right?
Yes.
And when I went to when I was in like late high school and in college, my parents got married, like a lot of our parents, young. They were like 21 or 22.
Yep. Yeah.
So I felt, and some of our parents got married like 17, 19. You know what I'm saying? Like they
Yeah,
got
yeah,
married.
yeah.
So when I was in college, it was like, okay, now I'm like switching, and I'm like, okay, I need to find a husband. Like this is important now, right? This is
Yeah.
part of the path that you're supposed to follow.
And even at, like,
So
a young age, because I think when you see it modeled at, like, 21, my mom was 21 when she had me, and so it's kind of like you're already thinking whoever you're dating at the time is probably your husband or gonna be your
correct.
husband, like, that's
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So I started dating this man who was, by all accounts, right, this perfect person for me, who was a leader in our church, just like I was. I had a lot of leadership. I was youth leader, and like, I mean, just I don't even want to get into it, but like I was a youth, like a leader for the in my church, in my local church, and
Yeah.
eventually in life I become a leader more at the institutional level of the church. Okay, but in this moment when
Mhm.
I was still in college, I was like, okay, keeping my eye out for who is this person going to be, right? So when I was maybe like a junior in college, I think it was, he and I started dating, and this person was somebody who was like perfect for me. He was studying to be a pastor of church,
Wow.
and he was also considered a leader at church. He was very well regarded, and for me that was like great. I was like, awesome, we're gonna have a ministry together, right? This is what I used to like think.
Yeah.
And because again, that was part of the prescribed life path, right? And we were aligned in that way, right? That we were both seen as leaders, and that we could have this kind of life together. And
Mhm.
so um we were married when I was 24 years old, and we got engaged 2
Wow.
years before that. We got engaged when I was 22.
Yeah.
So, um, anyway, we when we got married, it was at first okay, I guess. I
Mhm.
just wrote it off to like, oh, first year of marriage is hard. It's difficult, you know. But then eventually things started going really downhill. I started to feel so trapped. I would
Mm.
cry every single night thinking about all of the things that I was losing by having married this person, that I would never get to travel the world, that I would never do the career things that I wanted to do, that I would never
Yeah.
the life that I wished that I could write for myself, that I would never have that, because I came to
Yeah.
realize that I had followed the prescribed path, and that it didn't align with who I was and what I wanted for myself.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, like, marrying somebody doesn't necessarily have to mean that, but it did for you because of the expectations around what it means to marry someone who's going to be a pastor and to have to abide by all of the expectations from the religion, culture, Marianismo. Because when you think of, like, a marriage, like, it doesn't have to be that way. Like, I think of, like, oh, you can travel together and, like, you can have your own life and you can have your own friends and you can go on girls trips and all of that. But when you're 22, 24, and then you also live within these contracts, it makes sense that it's like, oh no, marriage has to look a specific way and I have to be a specific person.
I have to be a specific person. I have to, and I'm now sort of a public figure in
Ah,
this way.
yes, that makes
Mhm.
sense.
So the marriage started going downhill by year two. Things just really they were already emotionally abusive, and they were starting to like tip over into more like physical kind of stuff, right? And so one day, this is the moment that like completely just, this is my pivot point, right? Like this was the
Yeah.
moment that I decided I can't do this anymore. This is not the
Yeah.
life that I want to live.
Yeah.
So it was one day that we were having this huge argument. And I really don't tell this story publicly very often, but I think it's time. I feel like it's time for me to start telling it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was one day that we were having a really intense argument because I found out that there had been an affair and all of these different things. And so it was like a very loud argument. And I feel so bad for our neighbors at the time because they were probably like, that poor girl is going through it.
Yeah.
But that day, he had me pinned up like this against the wall and he punched the wall next to my face. Now, yeah.
And we all know what that means, like what that implies.
Correct. So I literally in that moment, I don't know what took over me, but I just looked at him and I went under his arm. Like I got out from under his arm. I grabbed some underwear. I grabbed my cell phone and the keys and I walked out the door and I went to my parents' house and I knocked on their door and they opened the door. It was like midnight. It was late. And they were like, what the heck is going on? And I was like, we're getting a divorce is what I told them.
Yeah.
But I think what I said was something like, he wants a divorce. I don't remember what it was that I said, but it was something like that.
Yeah.
And that was the moment that changed everything for me. I was like, this is not the life that I want. And it has taken since that moment, that happened in 2013. Mm-hmm. My life has taken years for me to right the ship of what now is my life now, right?
Yeah.
It looks so different than what it looked like then. I think we overestimate what can happen in a year and really underestimate what can happen in a decade for you when you try to change or when you want to change directions. A decade just feels like a really long time, but you blink and you close your eyes and the time passes anyway. So
because it's been a decade since that day in 2013.
Yeah, it's been a decade. It's been a decade this year since the divorce finalized in 2014.
2014.
So,
and maybe we're going to share this, but like, how was it received when you showed up to your parents' house and you kind of essentially alluded to like, it's over, given everything that we kind of know about your story, what you would think like of how that ideally you would want it to be received. But I kind of am like, I'm hearing this and I'm like, I actually don't know how this would have been received. It could have gone a lot of ways. What happened?
Yeah. My parents were extremely supportive. My parents were extremely supportive.
Okay. I'm so glad.
And my siblings also were. I will say, though, that the people around us at church, people didn't believe me that that's what was happening because he was so well regarded that it was not something that people believed that was happening to me, that I felt. I literally, Mariela, he used to call my name from another room and I used to cringe because I knew that what was coming was harsh criticism or like just because I was already, the emotional abuse was already there. I felt so small. I felt so small. And when I was telling this story to the people at church, people were like, they didn't believe me. And then people started giving me this awful advice, like, oh, if you get pregnant, maybe he'll change direction.
Yes. Yeah, that's wild that advice actually, I was given that advice once now that you said that. And it's just like, wow, like the fact that it's like, oh no, you just trap him some more, even though like, you're like, no, I actually don't want this. Like, I'm not trying to change him. It's the idea that it's either your fault or that you can change them some kind of way.
Yes. Yeah. And to add to that, so like have a baby with him. Pray more for him. You're not praying enough for your husband.
You have to pray. Oh my gosh, yeah.
That's why he's acting this way, is because you're not spending enough time with God. Ask God to change your heart instead of his heart. You know, like once you start changing, maybe he'll start changing. Like just like that was the kind of stuff. I used to get these books from people at church. The people at church would bring me these books that were actually just, now looking back at the books, these books encourage women to stay in abusive relationships much longer than they need to be in.
Yeah. And it makes sense because so much of it is kind of like that you're still responsible, like no matter what. So this is where we learn like you are actually responsible for the actions of other people, including when those actions are hurting you. Exactly. And it's like, that is so wildly like unhealthy. And also like, it's this like an indoctrination around like everything is essentially like your fault. So
Yes.
you have to take it on. So then like naturally, no wonder you like just blame yourself for everything. But
Yeah, it
man,
continues the cycle of abuse for sure.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. And
somehow,
something that many don't even talk about, like I think about the fact that you even said anything is already a rare occasion, I'd say,
yeah,
especially for as the amount of conditioning that you were under. Because
yes,
many times, no, the woman doesn't say anything, or the person that's receiving the abuse, is doesn't say anything. And then if they do, they don't say it to their community. They may say it to like a trusted person or a parent, and then
mhm,
they just like hush it and like hide it, and then like nobody really knows. So it's like it was so brave for you to even say this to your church community, knowing that it maybe wasn't going to be received with like empathy and understanding, which it wasn't. But I just wanted to say that even in itself is like already kind of a miracle.
right. I that's what I was gonna say is like somehow in my not knowing how to do this, right? Like I didn't know that I was in that moment following intuition, or that I didn't know that that's what this was, right? But like
Yeah.
my intuition was really strong even though I had all this conditioning. And so
Yeah.
even at that time, and it showed up in this way. It showed up in me saying like, "Hey, this is what I'm experiencing." And I will say I was probably naive because I thought that these people were going to support me. I thought that
Mm,
I was going to get backup, that somebody was going to help me, and that's not
yeah.
what happened. That's not what happened
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
community.
Yeah. 'Cause they were your community. I think that's one thing to know. Like I know parallels of this from my baby sister who was like very very deep in her like church community, the Christian church community, and how it kind of mirrors like those are also your friends
Yeah.
and like your almost like family type friend relationships, and that like your belonging in the church isn't just like going to like being part of a club. It's like it's actually everyone and everything,
Yes.
including your community. So how like dangerous that can actually be for someone who doesn't have support when you're also losing your community, potentially by like through your actions or your decisions or leaving the church and all of that.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
This, and the group that I was a part of was it's a global institution, right? So it's not like, oh, this is just my local church. Like once you
Oh
lose that,
wow.
you're losing
Yeah.
like this big worldwide community that
Yeah.
you have your whole life that you are a part of. So anyway,
Yeah. So I'm wondering then, you lived your life a certain way for your whole life. And then that argument, you said you showed up, it's almost like something you woke up in you, right? And you were able, what do you, looking back now, were there things you did differently or changed before that moment that actually allowed you to leave versus argue with him and stay, or argue with him and go to your mom's house and then come back and work it out?
yes, I think that I had started to look inward and focus on myself, right? Because I
Yeah.
was like, I really just thought there's nothing I can do to change how he's acting.
Mhm.
I knew that the only person that I could control in behavior was myself. And so
Yeah.
I started just doing things like taking walks, or, exercising, or, trying to figure out how I could eat a little bit better, or just cooking something different. Just like little things that started to move my focus away from the relationship and over to myself.
Okay. That's so
That's
interesting because all of those things now, I'm like, now looking back, what were all of those things collectively that you did? Like changing the way you ate, going to walks, like, taking care of yourself. Because I feel like you kind of discovered like this is what rewired you.
Yes. And it wasn't something that I was doing on purpose. Like I
Yeah.
just knew that there was nothing I could do outside of me. Like there was nothing I could do. Like I just felt helpless outside of myself. So I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm the one. I can do things a little bit different for me. And maybe that'll
Yeah.
help soothe how I'm feeling, because I was so
Yeah.
sad. I
How
was
you're
so depressed. I
feeling.
was so like anxious. Yeah.
That makes sense. So it's like
In a
that was the
nutshell.
beginnings of like self-care rewired you to
Mhm.
react differently to similar patterns. So maybe the physical part hadn't been as physical as it was that day, but the
Mhm.
overall patterns were there, but you were able to show up differently because you had shown up differently to yourself by starting to take these smaller actions of taking care of yourself, which like in itself, now you know, and you teach this and you teach your clients this on how self-care and these actions directed towards yourself and almost like directing love and loving actions towards yourself actually rewires you to show up to the same situations, the same circumstances, the same patterns, the same people as a different person. And it's like what you're describing to me is that. And when you said that, when you first told me your story, it literally, you illuminated in reverse age 30 and 31 to me, where I had been in a 13-year relationship where I was gaslit and cheated on. And then the one day that I left, even though it was like, hey, I had been cheated on all this time, but the day that I left, it had been preceded by a year of working out and eating better. Wild. So like you helped me see that in your own story where I was like, oh, that makes sense. What made me like show up to a similar situation as a different person? Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
exactly. But it wasn't honestly like those were just like little things that I was doing that it wasn't like I didn't really realize. And exactly like you, like I'm just gonna eat better and I'm gonna work out. You don't really realize in the moment that making those changes is what's going to like throw you in a completely different direction. There's no indication in that moment because it just feels so small. Like I'm just gonna focus on me. Like that, it feels tiny.
Why does it work? Why, like what happens with those actions when you did it or when your clients do it, and like what is actually happening there?
Yeah. I mean, I think you said it a little bit earlier. I think that it starts to rewire your brain to try different things. And I think that the other thing that it's doing is that it's doing a lot of things. Okay. Another thing that it's doing, it is building your confidence. Your confidence is not a feeling. Okay. People are like, oh, Natalia, you show up so confidently. Girl, that's not a feeling. Okay. Confidence is actually your willingness to try new things or to try again, right? And so when you are doing things where you're taking care of yourself, you are building the blocks for you to trust yourself enough that you can try a new thing.
That makes sense. Because confidence doesn't mean you know that something's going to turn out well. It's how you show up to what you don't know.
Exactly. It's how you show up to what you don't know. A lot of times, people think that, confidence is built over time. Like, people who play the guitar, people who dance and they look confident and on the dance floor, whatever. At first.
So
the
true.
confidence getting out there and doing it. That was the confidence moment. And you continue to build confidence as you become more competent in the thing that you're doing. So I think that self-care is doing that.
So it's almost like what you're partially doing is just breaking the pattern, period.
You're breaking
Which is like one thing that's showing your brain like, oh, my life could be different. My routine could be different. But it's so funny because when you think about like changing your life, you don't necessarily decide that day, I'm going to change my life today. You're just like, I'm going to change my morning routine today.
Yeah.
You have to change your morning routine before you change your life. Oh, I think that part of what self-care did was it made my body receive love. It was almost like, oh, this is when I direct love towards my body, then it's less tolerant of not love.
Yes.
In that, I don't know that I did not know that at the time, but I was just like, oh, this feels good to put like good food in my body and like water and like working out and like sweating and like the endorphins from working out and like all of those things just felt so good that I was like, ooh, I'm showing up to the same thing. But it was like my tolerance was like, absolutely not. Like I don't treat me like this, so you can't treat me like this.
Exactly.
Which is huge.
Love part is huge. I feel like a lot of us see that connection consciously of like, okay, the more that I take care of my body, the more loved I felt by me, right?
Exactly.
And that tolerance outside is like gone. You're like, okay, people with their BS can go somewhere else because I love me. And so, I'm going to love me. So I think that that's one of the things. And I think that the connection that's a little bit less made between self-care and self-trust. Right? Because you start loving yourself more, and that is really important. But the other thing that it's doing is that it is bringing you inward to practice listening to your body and what it needs. And then action based on that. And suddenly now you're like, oh, I have my own back. I can be trusted.
Like when you're listening to everybody else, you wouldn't trust yourself. I needed to do what my husband tells me or the church or my mom.
I'm like realizing, oh, I can be trusted. Like a lot of us are sitting here holding in our pee for hours and
Yeah.
not controlling the water because we're so busy that we're like,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
and what
Or
is that
not
telling?
eating
We're not eating. Like, what is
sometimes.
that yeah, what is that telling your
Yeah.
body? What is that telling your body? You're last. I can't trust you to
Yeah.
take care of my needs. Like, that
That's
is
so
what
true.
you're telling your body in that moment is like, don't trust me to take care of your needs because I won't, because I'm gonna sit here and not eat, or I'm gonna
Yeah.
sit here and hold it in
Yep.
until I absolutely can't hold it in anymore.
Yeah.
And so what self-care is doing, it is bringing you back in to listen to the needs of your body and to
Yeah.
listen I ask my body every day now, what do you need?
Oh,
What do you need? Literally this morning, I woke up and I had promised myself, and I talk about keeping small promises all the time.
yes.
So I keeping small promises to yourself all the time as a
Yeah.
way to build self-trust. But
Yes.
this morning I woke up and I had started my period a little bit early.
Uh-huh.
And I had promised myself that I was going to go to the gym today. And so I was
Yep.
like, okay, let me go inward and ask my body what it needs. And what my body said was like, I treat my body with gentleness when my body needs gentleness, right? When I need
Mm.
gentleness, I give myself gentleness. And what I
Yeah.
needed then was, instead of going to the gym for a hard like workout where I'm lifting weights, I'm
Yeah.
going to go for a walk and I'm going to observe the birds and the trees and whatever, and do that instead.
Mm.
A lot more gentle on my body, and was
Yeah.
what I needed in the moment. And I'm
Yeah.
telling my body, my body is like, oh, she can be trusted to take care of what I need in the moment.
And what that is so much more like you're giving yourself discernment back rather than discipline. And I've never really liked the word discipline because I think many of us, I'm sure you did, and I know I did, grew up with discipline, meaning you have to do what you said you were going to do every single day and you have to do the same thing. And
Mhm.
what discernment does is more like, what do you need? And like being able to make a decision based on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just like listening to the wisdom of my body and of
Yeah.
myself.
No, that makes
So
sense.
once I started to do that, like that self-trust that I built for my body, like that my body now understands that I can be trusted with my care, right?
Oh, man. Wow.
Now,
My body knows that I can be trusted with my own care. It's like wild. Like you'd have no problem with other people's care, but it's like your own in the smallest ways, like
with
stopping the
myself.
self-abandonment.
Yes. Now I can say, now 10 years later, I'm like, I can be trusted to build the life that I want for myself.
Yeah.
I can
Yes.
be trusted. Like, I trust myself to travel alone, to take jobs cross country and move to places that I don't know anybody, because I trust myself that I'm going to be fine. I
Yes.
trusted myself to start this business and to hire you. I trusted
Mhm.
myself this year to get a breast reduction because I needed it and that I was going to find the money to do it. I
Yes.
trusted myself to start these women's circles, even though it felt super scary to do at first. I
Mhm.
trusted myself to walk away from this church community that I felt oppressed by. I trust myself. I trust myself. I trust myself now. And it
Oh,
took years of me building that up in my body for me to
yeah.
be able to like break free of all of these other obstacles that were keeping me stuck in cycles and in life and in relationships that I didn't actually want for myself.
Man, Natalia, everything you just shared, like when it's like it all started from shifting your actions towards yourself.
Yes.
And then something that at a time felt insurmountable, like in emotionally and, physically abusive marriage, leaving the marriage, leaving the church, which was also leaving your community at the time,
Mhm.
making that decision and starting to take care of yourself and to get to the point of, like you said, you had a breast reduction like this year because that was affecting your health. And so
Mhm.
rather than just like taking it and like sucking it up and whatever and being like, no, I actually am unhappy. I don't like how this is affecting my health. You did that this year. We started working together this year. I also was telling you at the time, I was like, the fact that you got on a plane, like you hired a coach, you got on a plane, you flew to San Francisco, you let the whole day be about you. You had a photo shoot about you. You had the whole day that was about you and your business, planning this out, knowing that this whole year you were going to have something be about you and your dreams and your gifts and your goals. while you also did this, like you've done so many things since then. And you've also shared stories with me in coaching of like ways you showed up to situations. And I was like, that's your self-trust. I was like, ooh, look at self-trust come through in that conversation. Oh, look at self-advocacy come through. And it all was based on self-trust allowed you to do all of that. So I just wanted
Exactly.
to say that you've completely rebuilt your life, but you didn't do it all at once. Like you did
No.
it going inward with self-care, and then that built self-trust. It's like self-care was the key that unlocked self-trust, and self-trust was the tool that you then used to re-canvas and repaint your life in all of these different regards.
And it, like we said a little bit earlier, like it was slow. Like back then,
Yeah.
when I got, like, I left my husband and all of that stuff. I moved to Maryland at the time, by the way. Like I left
Yeah.
him and then I moved to Maryland to take a job, and I didn't know anybody there.
Funny when you think about your life, like you could actually go from doing the same thing to all of a
Yeah.
sudden, like self-trust unlocks. Because this mirrors my story of when I turned 31. And then I said from 31 to 32, I lived more life than I did in all of my 20s. But it was a lot of like, all of a sudden, you just start doing brave shit, like one after another, after another, after another. But it doesn't just happen. It's like you do have this almost awakening of rewiring yourself. And then all of a sudden, your life it starts to look completely different.
It starts to look really different. So
Yeah.
leaving the church has taken me until the last, like, maybe 4 or 5 years. Like actually
Yeah.
walking away from that relationship
Oh,
took
wow.
me
Yeah.
5 years. You know what I mean? Like after
Yeah,
my
so that was
divorce.
years later. You didn't just leave the church. It was like you left the marriage and
No,
then you were still
I
in the
left the
church, and then
marriage
that
and
happened
then I
years
was
later. That's
exactly. So
so
it's not always linear, right? It's not always linear. Healing isn't linear.
yeah.
I'm okay with that. Like that's a part of life. Yeah, that's a part of it. That it's
So,
slow. And
and I think what's
okay.
important to note too, that it's like, and everyone listening is, could be in their own version of a chapter of that it's like recognizing that maybe they're at the very beginning of it and they might be hearing this and they're just like, yeah, no, I actually identify more with the version of Natalia who was like in the life and hadn't made the changes yet, or maybe has just started. And that's why they're listening to this podcast, because they're starting to like direct self-love and self-care towards themselves. So I would love to know, for the folks that are listening, they might identify with like a current state of being that feels really hard, like something about themselves, whether they can't trust themselves, they can't hear their own voice, or like they're really critical, or they're just, what are some different ways that self-care could help people depending on like what they're struggling with? And I ask this because I know that you are developing a tool for them. So I just wanted you to kind of tell us a little bit more about that.
So I've been developing this tool that I'm calling the self-care menu. And
Hmm.
basically the idea of it is that we're looking at, like a little bit earlier, we were talking about, before we started recording, about walking into a pharmacy and they tell you
Yeah,
what each herb is for, but like the herb or the oil has multiple uses. And
absolutely.
but you're going to use it for like this thing right now. The menu is like, here is some self-care to build your confidence or rebuild your confidence. Here are self-care practices that you can do for speaking up for yourself or
Oof.
doing self-advocacy. Here are self-care practices that you can use to build your self-trust or to love your body or to get out of feeling stuck. And
Yeah.
these are all just ideas that I have and that I have practiced myself that people can take and make their own, is the idea, right? That
Yeah.
I can give you something that you can do in 5 minutes or in 15 minutes or in 30 minutes so that they can fit into your life in a way that feels doable and
Yes.
sustainable, but also that you can take the practice, make it your own, and also make it your own medicine for what it is that you do need. So
Oh,
sometimes maybe
yeah.
you're good and you speak up for yourself and you don't have a problem with that, but you still need some clearing of this, practicing saying no sometimes.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
you can take some of these practices to help you in that path, or on that journey of learning to say no to more things, right?
Yes.
So that's what this tool is all about. And I share in the tool some like very small practices that people can start with, because as we've been saying all throughout the podcast today, is these are small things that we did that really changed the direction or disrupted what
Yeah,
we had been
disrupted is such a good way of putting it. Yeah, and disrupt and rewire, you know?
rewire, because our neuroplasticity is just like this really interesting thing. Like if we think about our brain pathways, it's
Mhm.
like you're driving over the same road over and over and over again,
Yeah,
it's
you're not
going to
thinking
start
about it.
building grooves, right?
Yeah.
And so basically what you're doing when you're doing this is you're throwing new gravel over those worn roads so that you
Mm.
can start driving in a different direction.
Yes, that makes so much sense. Like even from a scientific perspective, and this is something that like my brain often needs is that like I think especially because some of the people listening, I know a lot of my audience is like first gen and like eldest daughters and women of color, where we even if we want to care for ourselves, the idea of it is like, but like how does this work? Because it's like it's so hard to justify it even just to do it for yourself because you deserve it. I think the element of like you deserve it doesn't even always register. So I would even say, you don't need to believe that. You don't even need to be there. You just need to know that like this is actually going to help to rewire your brain to give it new ways of associating with yourself, and it's going to throw the pattern off, which is parts of what starts to help you like rewire yourself. So it's like even if you can't be on board with like, yeah, like I deserve it, but like, it's true from a scientific, like a neuroplasticity and a neuroscience perspective as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even when people tell me like, oh, that's the reason for self-care is that you deserve it. Like to me, I'm like,
Yeah. Like I deserve
like
a lot of things, but you're so used to like not giving yourself those things that it's
because you have
like,
$1 billion. You know what I mean? Like that.
but even if it's the part of your brain that's like, but I want a different life, it's like, okay, well, even if you can agree with that, this is a part of what starts to help you down that different life or different way of being with yourself.
Yes. A
Okay.
different way of showing up for yourself in your life. So
And so
that's what
the self-care menu that you mentioned, I know this is like a new tool. If someone is listening and they're like, okay, I want to see what's on this like menu, how can they access it?
So you can find me on Instagram. And the Instagram is at Natalia Lopez-Thismon. They can find me on IG, and that's where you can sign up to receive this tool. You can sign up for emails there as well. You can DM me on there. Like that's my main place where you're gonna find me. I'm also on TikTok at Natalia ILT.
How can folks like work with you? Like,
So I have a one-on-one coaching offer right now where people can work with me for 12 weeks, and we are just working one-on-one with what exactly it is that you need. So the program is very tailored to your experiences and where you are in your process of learning to take care of yourself or rebuilding self-trust or wherever it is that you are on that spectrum. I can
mhm.
help you move to the next level that you want to be
Yeah.
moving to. And so a lot of times, again, because we feel so stuck, we're not sure how to take the next step. That's what
Yeah.
I'm working with folks on. I
Yeah.
also have you mentioned at the beginning that I'm a rites of passage facilitator. So
Yes.
people can work with me on that, and I can, explain that a little bit if you like. And then also
Yeah.
people can come to my women's circles if they want to work with me there as well. I do
Yeah.
women's circles once or twice a month
Where
in
do you do
person.
them?
Yeah, in person in the Orlando area, Orlando, Florida, and also online. I do them online. So whoever wants to come, they can join there.
You're listening and you identify with any part of Natalia's story, whether it's like religious or marriage or not, but just knowing that you grew up with a lot of like conditioning around self-sacrifice and like who you should be and kind of putting others first, that self-care is the tool that unlocks self-trust, and self-trust is essentially what unlocks the person you really are meant to be in the life that you really want to build, whether that is you're feeling like you want to completely start from scratch, but many times there's like one aspect of your life that you feel like you really want to get unstuck and like
Mhm.
reimagine. If any of that like resonates with you, Natalia is absolutely the person that you need to be working with, because it really takes someone who has like walked that path in the way that she has in so many different ways. So I think that I think about how like if you had existed in the way that you do now, if you had this offer like back when I needed it, it probably wouldn't have taken me years, because I knew for a long time something was wrong before I actually like, oh, and I think about like your clients and your future clients don't need to spend 10 years like the way that I did. Like they don't need to spend 13 years to figure something out. And with that, is there anything that you didn't get to say that you want to leave folks with? Either something I didn't ask you or just a message that you want to leave folks with? from today's
Yeah,
life?
I mean, I think that, one of the things that I talk a lot about on my channel is about self-care being a revolutionary act.
Mm,
You are taking a radical act of healing in the face of systems that want to deplete us, in the face of systems
absolutely.
that want to burn us out, in the face of
Yes.
systems that don't believe in us or in our power, who actually want to take us away from our power. And so
Yeah.
I think that when you are taking care of yourself, this is what Audre Lorde said, right? Like she's like, this is a radical act of self-preservation. And
Yeah.
so that's really important for us to understand that I'm coming at it from that liberation standpoint, right? Like we
Mm,
need to liberate ourselves from the chains of colonization, that we need to liberate ourselves from the chains of the patriarchy, that we need to liberate ourselves from the chains of like these white capitalist patriarchal structures
yeah.
that keep us stuck as women, as Latinas, as women of color, as first gen immigrants, whatever it is, like they keep us stuck. And these systems benefit from us being stuck in these ways.
That's exactly it. Yep. They
So
benefit.
yeah. So I feel like that's also like another aspect that I bring into my coaching that a lot of people will not bring into their coaching is looking at the things that are keeping you stuck from a systemic point of view, culturally. Like, what are these systems that are keeping us stuck here?
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. When you said
yeah,
like the imbalances of power benefit from certain people, many of them women and women of color, being self-sacrificial and their unpaid labor and their
exactly.
thoughts about themselves being such that self-sacrifice translates in the workforce. It shows up everywhere and it's like who benefits? Not us.
Not
So,
us. And then, I often see when people talk about self care, it's this very fluffy, like, let's take a bath, like, whatever. And
oh,
Western wellness culture really centers expensive products or like going to the yoga studio or like self-care routines that don't align with our lived experiences as people who have experienced these systems of oppression in our lives. And so for me,
mm,
self-care is about reclaiming what is ours
ooh,
as women of color,
yeah.
as Latinas, what resonates with us spiritually and emotionally and culturally. And it's bringing back these practices that have supported our communities for generations,
Mm,
and that using them in meaningful ways so today. So like, I for me personally, this looks like herbal remedies and traditional healing. Not to say that Western medicine is not good, like I'm never gonna say that, okay? But
yeah.
that kind of thing. Ceremony, which is why I was talking a little bit about rites of passage earlier, taking those kinds of ceremonies back. And that's why I also do women's circles, decolonizing our spiritual practices. I
Mm,
mean, just all of these different things that are also self-care for us in the sense of like being rooted into who we are.
yeah.
So yeah, so that's also something that I bring into my coaching, but in my work in general, that I
Yeah.
think that a lot of coaches don't bring with them.
Yeah, that it's not the commercialized product-based thing. It's not like you go and you give yourself a trip or like a bubble bath or a product that those could be tools, but like more about the relationship with self because you can do those things and still feel like you're continuing to self-abandon and you still can feel disconnected from your body and you can still feel like you don't love your body and you can buy yourself things and experiences. So I think that's such
Exactly.
an important distinction that you shared.
Yes.
I feel like, you
Yeah.
are kind of in the same place.
Yeah. You still feel disconnected from yourself after that beautiful bubble bath, or like you went to get.
Yeah.
That's something that I did at first when I first got divorced. I was like, I'm going to take more baths, or I'm going to do my nails every other week, or I'm going to spend all this money that I don't have on a fancy gym. Right.
Yeah.
And so, and that still left me feeling super disconnected from myself.
Which
So,
is why, like, I think anyone who even heard Natalia talk about the self-care menu, that it's like, no, this can literally be like eating, like paying attention to whether your body is hungry, like drinking
mhm,
water, going for a walk, getting sun on your face, like all of those things can be self-care. They don't actually have to cost money. And that
yeah,
in fact, if it feels like, I would even say this is how it was for me, if it feels like love towards yourself, like that's self-care, not
yeah,
necessarily having to purchase things,
yeah,
unless it aids in you feeling like love towards yourself. So
yeah, and connected with yourself.
this was so good, Natalia. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I for sure I know like so many people are gonna see themselves in part of it. I hope they reach out to you and tell you about it because I know that when you're sharing something that you went through that at the time like was really hard and you really had to pull yourself, out of it and through it, that just hearing like one person say like I saw myself in that. Thank you for sharing. That can be so pivotal. So I would say if you're listening, like, please reach out to Natalia, let her know if you resonated with this, or screenshot this episode, share it, tag us both in the episode. It will be in the show notes, and reach out to Natalia, go to her profile. She's going to have the self-care menu up so that you can kind of see where can you get started, even if it's one small thing a day that takes 5 minutes. I'm grateful to work with you and just to help you bring your story out and your mission into the world more. So
thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy I was able to talk with you. Yeah.
All right. I will see you all next week, and thank you, Natalia.